it's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was thinking! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
Crew has already clinched the National League Central. They're 2 games behind LA, that being the Dodgers, trying to maybe get the 2nd seed in the National League standings for October.
Both of these teams have a chance to score some runs against these pitching matchups, so maybe another over, even though we do have a playoff atmosphere. And yes, Milwaukee did clinch, but there's still an eye on the prize of we might be able to chase down the Dodgers and also the Phillies to get one of those buys.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Brian Daboll has been feeling it. He's in a foul mood. He's having stare downs with Pat Leonard and everything else.
John Mara wants Brian Daboll to go and get the next quarterback. They tried to get the next quarterback. We all watched it on Hard Knocks. They couldn't end up with Daniels. They couldn't end up with May. So they said, okay, we'll run it back a year. We'll go get Neighbors, and we'll tolerate.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Happy Friday to all of you watching out there. Have a fun show, I think, planned for you today. On the program, we're going to get into the latest from the National Football League, Thursday Night Football. Also, great guest here on the show today. Roger Hoover, who does play-by-play for the Alabama Crimson Tide on radio, is going to join us a little bit later in the show, give us a preview of the upcoming game between Alabama and Georgia. Also, full college football preview as well from our guests from Sporting News. And by the way, for those of you who are watching in the Panhandle, the state of Florida, and even in Georgia, Alabama, anywhere in that area, prayers to all of you. I know that Hurricane Helene did a lot of damage. We're going to be seeing over the next, 24 hours or so. We were spared here in South Florida, but I know there's a lot of you that are watching. Some of you just have maybe internet access with not a lot of power. Thanks for tuning into the show today, and certainly prayers to all of you who are recovering from that damage. Well, maybe this is a secondary game for a lot of you then tonight, but the Dallas Cowboys did play the New York Giants last night, and it came right down to the wire in terms of the point spread, kind of a wild finish there. Dallas does pick up the win, and so, did they look great? Probably not. They played the Giants, but they do win 20-15. Dak Prescott threw a couple of touchdown passes. Malik Neighbors, the star wide receiver, not just on the Giants, but in the NFL, also had a big game. We'll talk about him in just a minute. Needless to say, Dak Prescott in a road game when he needed it, came up big, throwing a couple of touchdowns. One was to Rico Dowdle. And so right now, Dallas has put themselves back into at least the conversation for playoff positioning. The Giants, of course, haven't looked good all season long outside of last week against Cleveland. Here's Dak after the game talking about picking up the road win.
It was huge. It was huge. Yeah, after obviously losing 2, especially at home. Coming on the road, first division game. Division wins are always tough. As I said, then you add on the road before a long weekend. Puts a better taste in our mouth. But at the end of the day, as I've said, even after those 2 losses the past 2 weeks, it's a process. So we're not going to get complacent. We're not going to get overexcited about what we've done tonight. It's about building, and it's about figuring out what we can do better in all phases. But it's a lot easier to do that with the win.
Yeah, meanwhile, the heat is on the New York Giants. That was a home loss yesterday. Tough to swallow there for everyone involved, especially the head coach, Brian Daboll, who is certainly on the hot seat, I would think, moving forward. He talked about dropping this one to Dallas.
All right, tough game, competitive game. Came down there to the end. Missed a couple opportunities to advance the ball or keep drives going. Thought the quarterback played well. Made a lot of good decisions, throws. Couldn't get our run game going. Tried a variety of runs. Give them credit. They did a good job of shutting down our run game. So that was huge. The big play to 88. But again, competitive game. Give them a lot of credit. tough one.
Yeah, tough for Devin Singletary, as he mentioned, on the ground, under 30 yards rushing. The big story from the Giants' perspective last night was another great game for Malik Neighbors, who had over 11 catches for over 100 yards, but needless to say, left this game late with a concussion. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is this morning, Neighbors has already gone on Instagram and says he's okay. Now, what does that mean? We really don't know. There's been a lot of very serious protocols being placed, especially this year more than ever with concussions. We've seen players miss games. There's a receiver right now on the Philadelphia Eagles, Devonta Smith, who has not cleared concussion protocol, by the way, after thinking maybe he was okay after last week's game too. So I guess 10 days to play for Neighbors before the next game. That's the good news for him. Meanwhile, let's go over to college football. Of course, a big week coming, Alabama and Georgia. We'll have a full preview of that one. But the Mountain West did get 7 commitments, which is what they were looking for to expand the conference. Air Force, UNLV, New Mexico, Nevada, San Jose State, Wyoming, and Hawaii signed a memorandum of understanding. I like that. Memorandum of understanding to stay in the league, with all of them agreeing to execute a grant of media rights, because that's really what the bottom line is. They got to sell the TV rights, 2026 through 2032. Texas State basically could be one of those teams that expands. Statement from the Mountain West, here it is. The agreements announced Monday mark a historic moment for the Mountain West, provide much needed stability and clarity as the world of intercollegiate athletics continues to evolve rapidly. We're excited about the future and the next steps in expansion. Micah Parsons of the Dallas Cowboys also left the game last night and undergoing an MRI on his ankles. X-rays were negative. He could potentially be fine. I'm hesitant to say that with any injury in the NFL. The Lions have ruled out their key center, Frank Ragnow, for Monday night with a pectoral injury. Campbell said they're going to shut him down for this week. Justin Herbert, limited for a second day of practice. He says he's progressing. The Chargers went to Taylor Heineke in the fourth quarter of that game against the Steelers last week. Also, Andy Dalton takes on the Cincinnati Bengals this week and says you can't take them lightly. I think that's probably fair to say. All right, college football game tonight. A big one for one of the top 10 teams in all of college football playing at home. Not the best weather tonight here in South Florida, but number 7 Miami will take on Virginia Tech. 17.5-point favorites. The total is 53 as they will play that game in Miami Gardens tonight. Also, Washington will take on Rutgers. Scarlet Knights are 2-point favorites, down from 2.5. Total is 44 in that one. Also, in case you missed it last night in college football, Army won and covered the spread. Temple is not having a good season. 42-14 the final there. Also, Oregon has landed 5-star offensive lineman Douglas Utu in a flip in the portal from the University of Tennessee. Major League Baseball is going right down to the wire, and the key right now is the wild card in the American League and the wild card in the National League. We know the NL could go down to Monday. Here's the status right now of the American League. Baltimore is in, and the final wild card spots go down to Detroit, Kansas City, and Minnesota. The Twins, believe it or not, lost again to the Marlins last night. So all the Tigers or Royals need to do is win, combined with a Minnesota Twins loss of any kind, and both those teams are in. So basically magic number down to, I believe, a half for both of those teams. So Twins need to win out. Tigers, Royals would need to lose out. Otherwise, those teams are in, and a collapse by the Twins indeed. The Dodgers have clinched the National League West. Maybe took them a little bit more time than they wanted. Freddie Freeman exited this game with an injury. We'll keep an eye on his status. The Yankees beat the Orioles 10-1. Who hit a home run? None other than Aaron Judge yet again. 60 is now within reach. Will they play him the last couple of games? I guess we'll see. He's got 58 home runs as he heads into the weekend. Another big story from Major League Baseball, a very emotional scene at the Oakland Coliseum. The final game played by the Oakland A's or anyone else there as they now play in Sacramento next season. I thought there was an incredible scene yesterday. Great job by the fans showing up for that game. A lot of emotion. They pick up the victory. Also, Tampa Bay Rays former shortstop, I guess, probably fair to say, Wander Franco is going to stand trial on charges for sexual abuse of a minor, and that's going to happen over the next month or so. The WNBA is seeing all-time high in ratings thanks to some great play, and let's also thank Caitlin Clark for that. It was cable's most viewed WNBA game ever. 2.5 million viewers catching that affair. The Chicago Sky have fired Teresa Weatherspoon after just one season as coach, 13-27 on the season there. The NHL Players Association has filed a grievance on behalf of center Ryan Johansson after the Flyers terminated his contract. He was owed $8 million. Needless to say, they'll try to recoup that if they can. Coming up next, Bill Bender is going to join us here on the show. What is the current line between Georgia and Alabama? I'm going to have to it has changed so much. 3, 2.5, 2, 1.5, 2. During this break, I'm going to check this myself over on FanDuel and DraftKings. And then when we come back, we will preview this game with Bill Bender. He's ready to give out his pick for the game of the year in college football. There's going to be a lot of them, but that's the game of the year this week in Tuscaloosa. We'll be right back here with more NewsWire on SportsGrid as we preview the big games in college football, including Georgia, Alabama, Penn State, Illinois, and Notre Dame and Louisville. We'll be right back. Do we have a fantasy star on our hands here, George? Here is the question with Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. A lot of folks went into the fantasy season saying, hey, look, maybe this isn't Anthony Richardson, but it could be the next best thing. I'm here to tell you, I don't know. I'm sort of feeling like Daniels could be better than Anthony Richardson.
I don't know if I'm going to go there yet, all right? But I think he's in the conversation, yeah. What did we hear at draft time? A lot of people wanted a quarterback who could move. Right? You don't want the guy who's going to take 5-7 steps and throw the football anymore because you want that additional rushing yards. You know, you get 50, 60 yards, that's a touchdown. Right? That's why Josh Allen is so valuable. Lamar Jackson is so valuable. Right? You go up and down. Jalen Hurts. You go up and down here. I think Daniels is going to be a good quarterback. I think Washington got their guy, and he can throw the football too. We know McLaurin's a really good wide receiver. It may not be much else there. We'll see what McCaffrey can be. Luke McCaffrey can be there in time. But, you know, I do have hope for him. I think at season's end, he's going to be a quarterback one. It may be a low-end quarterback one, but a quarterback one nonetheless.
Yeah, I was really impressed watching him in that game. All right, now Anthony Richardson, look, he's going to have a big year. He's going to have a big fantasy year. There's no question about it. I don't know about the long-term viability here. And look, give him credit. He hung in there with the Houston Texans. My fear for him, George, is that when you go back and you watch film, if you protect the deep ball against Richardson, he could hurt you with his legs. And that may be where all of his fantasy value is coming from. I cannot see him throwing 2 70-yard bombs like he did again.
That should come in time, right? Practice time. I think he will get better here. I think Richardson is going to be fine. Does need to learn how to avoid hits. All right. Once again, remember that hit from Tua last night? He initiated it. Slide. The rules are made for you not to get hit. Take advantage of them.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Saturday night, your place to be is right here on our network as we'll have live action and in-game live updates from the big game in college football, which is this week being played in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The Georgia Bulldogs will travel to Alabama, where right now the point spread is Georgia -1.5, but there's a lot of -2 out there. Georgia's actually a little bit of plus money at 1.5. So needless to say, I think, Bill, the way that I view this game is money line either way. Our producer Franks doesn't think so. He wants the points at 1.5 if he's going to take Alabama. But, I guess it is certainly possible that it comes down to 1 point. Odds would tell you it's not going to be the case, that one team would win by this more. But again, I'll turn it over to you, Bill. You've analyzed the game. You've talked about it over at Sporting News all week long. I know we're going to get to Notre Dame in a minute. We're going to make you take the other team in that game, of course. I'm not going to make you take one team here, though. What do you got? Georgia, Alabama.
Well, I've looked at it all week and said, why is Georgia favored? I keep asking myself that question. Alabama's at home. Kalen DeBoer has been in these games. They won the SEC championship game last year, and Jalen Milroe was fantastic in the fourth quarter in that game. He let a go-ahead drive, didn't miss a pass. They end up winning the game. I still think Georgia's the better team, though. The defense hasn't given up a touchdown. Carson Beck, they're going to need to get the running game going behind him. He's been accurate all year. He hasn't thrown an interception. In a game of the year like this, like Frank knows, it's probably going to come down to a field goal. And if it does, I think Georgia makes that field goal. I had the final score at 24-21 with the understanding that in the last 6 games between these teams, the favorite has won 4, but the favorite has failed to cover in 4 of those games. But this line's a lot shorter, so I think you can get away with taking the Bulldogs, especially at 1.5.
Yeah, it's almost reminiscent, Bill, of when Alabama and LSU would be facing off through the years, Saturday nights, in the SEC, and the games would come down literally to 1 point at the end. Maybe that is the case going into this game this year. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the current odds to win the Heisman. You made a really good point earlier in the week, which is if Alabama is to beat Georgia, then maybe this is your last opportunity to take Jalen Milroe at any kind of long odds here. He's plus 750 over on FanDuel. Now, Cam Ward has had the best season of anyone in college football, but as you said also earlier in the week, the Heisman for September is not the Heisman for November. So to me, that's my take on it. If you think Alabama's going to win this game, you should jump on Milroe right now because he'll be down to 4 or 5-1 after the game. But if you don't think so, who else would you pick to win the Heisman?
Well, I think Cameron Ward, we get to see him tonight against Virginia Tech. And these Friday night games are very good for teams that want to get that exposure. I don't know how many people have watched Miami closely, with the exception of the Florida Gators game. If he goes out against Virginia Tech tonight, throws 350 yards and 4 touchdowns, he's thrown for 300 or more yards in every game this year, Cam Ward will still be in the lead. But when everybody's watching Georgia and Alabama, the winner of that game will get a bump. And I think if Jalen Milroe is able to do what he did last year and lead them to a victory against Georgia, he had 2 touchdowns in this game last year, and he's the right mix of throwing the ball plus rushing touchdowns. Now, a lot of people have been talking about Travis Hunter too. I just don't. I get the snap count. I get the two-way play. I still think Colorado has to be on the radar. I don't think they can go 4-8 or 5-7 and they'll award Travis Hunter the Heisman. He might get a ton of votes. He might play a ton of snaps, but I think he's one of those off-the-radar guys that keeps getting attention, and it's worth it. What he's doing is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, offense and defense. I mean, we just don't see that often. Okay, so big game this week in Happy Valley. Penn State, 17.5-point favorites over a little bit of a stunning ranked Illinois, ranked number 19 in the country. And I think one of the stories in college football this year, Bill, has been this idea that anybody ranked from like 18, 19 through 25, they're in 1 week, and then they're either much higher or they're out. That's the way that the top 25 has worked. So if Penn State does cover this number, Illinois is going to go from 19 to out. But the Illini have been a very big story right now in college football. They've pulled off some upsets. They've won some big games. Does that continue this weekend?
Well, they've been a super dog under Brent Bielema, 10-3 against the spread with him as an underdog. So you look at that and you think maybe they can go into Happy Valley. A little bit of a, I don't want to call it passive aggressive, but back and forth about the whiteout energy this week between Brett Bielema and James Franklin. So it is hard to go to Penn State and win at night. I've been to a couple games there. You can get caught in that environment, especially if you don't have a good start. So for Luke Altmaier, who leads the Big Ten with 10 touchdown passes and no interceptions, nobody had that in the preseason. He just has to be efficient. They have to stay on schedule. They can't get in 3rd and longs. How do they slow down this Penn State running back attack that averages 255 yards per game between Nick Singleton, Katron Allen? I think Penn State wins, but that's a big number. The way Illinois is playing and knowing their reputation as an underdog, I think they cover.
Okay, fair enough. All right, now we get to the fun part of the show where I rip on Notre Dame a little bit. They're taking on Louisville this week, -6.5. Against, Louisville, another team, by the way, outside of that top 10 that has crept into the top 15. I'll tell you what stands out to me, Bill. The total, okay? I'm seeing like 46, 47s in some spot here. I mean, Notre Dame's offense is horrible. Louisville last week beat Georgia Tech because this dude on Georgia Tech couldn't kick a field goal. He had it blocked. The guy ran all the way back for a touchdown. That's how Illinois got a lot of points. I'm sorry, that's how Louisville got a lot of points in that game. You're telling me that there's going to be 50 points in this game? I don't think so, man. That's my view on this one.
I think 24-21 sounds about right either way. This Louisville offense does average over 500 yards per game, but they haven't played a defense like Notre Dame, and they're on the road. And I think it's a little bit different than last year when Louisville was able to run the football, have some success. Notre Dame does need to get the offense going and have some sort of passing attack around Riley Leonard. I think Notre Dame wins the game, but I don't think they cover. It's a field goal game either way and kind of sets up that Georgia-Alabama game at night. Should be a fun weekend. And we'll have to talk about the Irish at least a few more times if they get this win.
I got like 17-13 final in this, maybe even less than that in this game. All right, Bill, enjoy the big game this week. You're now in the house here with Georgia Saturday night. We'll talk about it. We'll see what happens next week. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Hey, no problem. Thank you.
All right, Bill Bender has got you covered with all college football news notes and, of course, picks against the spread over at sportingnews.com. We've got the Sports Grid sound off next. And go up. Do we have a fantasy star on our hands here, George? Here is the question with Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. A lot of folks went into the fantasy season saying, hey, look, maybe this isn't Anthony Richardson, but it could be the next best thing. I'm here to tell you, I don't know. I'm sort of feeling like Daniels could be better than Anthony Richardson.
I don't know if I'm going to go there yet, all right, but I think he's in the conversation, yeah. What did we hear at draft time? A lot of people wanted a quarterback who can move. Right? You don't want the guy who's going to take 5-7 steps and throw the football anymore because you want that additional rushing yards. You know, you get 50, 60 yards, that's a touchdown. Right? That's why Josh Allen is so valuable. Lamar Jackson is so valuable. Right? You go up and down. Jalen Hurts. You go up and down here. I think Daniels is going to be a good quarterback. I think Washington got their guy, and he can throw the football too. We know McLaurin's a really good wide receiver. It may not be much else there. We'll see what McCaffrey can be. Luke McCaffrey can be there in time. But, you know, I do have hope for him. I think at season's end, he's going to be a quarterback one. It may be a low-end quarterback one, but a quarterback one nonetheless.
Yeah, I was really impressed watching him in that game. All right, now Anthony Richardson, look, he's going to have a big year. He's going to have a big fantasy year. There's no question about it. I don't know about the long-term viability here. And look, give him credit. He hung in there with the Houston Texans. My fear for him, George, is that when you go back and you watch film, if you protect the deep ball against Richardson, he could hurt you with his legs. And that may be where all of his fantasy value is coming from. I cannot see him throwing 2 70-yard bombs like he did again.
That should come in time, right? Practice time. I think he will get better here. I think Richardson is going to be fine. Does need to learn how to avoid hits. All right. Once again, that hit. Remember that hit from Tua last night? He initiated it. Slide. The rules are made for you not to get hit. Take advantage of them.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. It's time now to get into the latest injuries in the National Football League and matchups as well. It's time for the SportsGrid Sound Off. All right, let's begin with the key matchup on the field between the Minnesota Vikings and Green Bay Packers. Should be a good matchup this weekend, which will include arguably the best or one of the best wide receivers in the NFL against the best or one of the best, arguably, defensive backs in the NFL. That is Justin Jefferson against Jair Alexander. You could call this the matchup within the matchup.
Yeah, I didn't really care if he played or not last year. I was just more focused on, of course, during that time, we were fighting to get back into the playoffs. And to make our run. You know, that's something that I was looking forward to. I really don't care about the matchup, honestly. I feel like he cares more of it than I do. But I mean, it is what it is. That's every team. No knick-knack at Jair. That's every team and how they scheme up against me and you know how they try to play me. So it doesn't matter if I'm going up against Jair or if I'm going up against the worst corner in the league. It doesn't matter. We have a game plan and we have a scheme and a plan to go out there and execute no matter who's guarding us. So we still feel like they're gonna mix in a little bit of how they used to play us versus how they play us now. But just watching the past 3 games and seeing how they play, see how they play their number one receiver, we definitely have a plan for it. It's great to look at, just to see how they move, the corners move, or if Jair travels or not. If they playing one high, 2 high, if they double, stuff like that. That's definitely stuff that we're looking at.
I think right now that's the key matchup in the NFL this week between Minnesota and Green Bay. Meanwhile, there's a lot of matchups in the National Football League that we'll have to keep an eye on. I had this wrong. I thought a lot of tight ends who were great last year would be great again this year. Mark Andrews had a tough start. Sam Laporta has been hurt. Trey McBride on the Arizona Cardinals is questionable for this week. Lots of injuries to the tight end position, to say the least. Here's Dr. Chow on the Lions tight end.
By video, this is a right low ankle sprain for Sam Laporta, meaning he's likely to play through. I get it. There's a week 5 bye. Will Detroit elect to rest him? I think no, because low ankle sprains are reliable in the way they heal. This is not a high ankle sprain. We'll see how the week progresses. There's no injury report yet given the Monday game for Detroit, but we lean towards Laporta being able to play through. Running in a straight line, no problem. Cutting, more of an issue, but we lean towards Laporta playing Monday night versus the Seahawks.
That's Dr. Chow from SICScore.com. Meanwhile, the injury report wouldn't be the same without the San Francisco 49ers. You got Christian McCaffrey heading to Germany. You got George Kittle missing last week's game. You got Deebo Samuel missing last week's game. But there was good news at practice yesterday. As Kittle practiced, Deebo Samuel was on the field. Here's Dr. Chow on those two.
George Kittle, limited practice in the first injury report with a hamstring. Deebo Samuel did not practice with the calf. We're expecting Deebo to miss for sure this week, and Kittle has a chance to play, but not fully effective. If he does play, he's likely an extra blocker and decoy more than a weapon downfield, given his late hamstring injury the previous week. Let's see what happens, but the 49ers are certainly very banged up. Everyone's talked about CMC and his trip to Germany. For more details, go to SICScore.com.
Yeah, meanwhile, at yesterday's practice, Kittle on the field, Deebo on the field. So, of course, tune in Sunday morning to Pro Football Today to get the latest on that. Coming up next here on the show, Jim Gazzale is going to join us from Legal Sports Report. We'll go over the very latest on the results from Michigan, and we'll see if spending by some of the online sports betting operators picks up over the next few months with the winter months coming. In addition, if you want to learn more about our programming here over at SportsGrid, just download the SportsGrid app. It's available right now for iOS and Android. And how you find it is just by taking out your phone and scanning that QR code that you see on your screen, however you are watching this show. By the way, it is absolutely free. The SportsGrid app for iOS and Android. Up next, Jim Gazzale has the very latest on sports betting from Legal Sports Report. So stay with us on the grid. We'll be right back. Do we have a fantasy star on our hands here, George? Here is the question with Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. A lot of folks went into the fantasy season saying, hey, look, maybe this isn't Anthony Richardson, but it could be the next best thing. I'm here to tell you, I don't know. I'm sort of feeling like Daniels could be better than Anthony Richardson.
I don't know if I'm going to go there yet, all right, but I think he's in the conversation, yeah. What did we hear at draft time? A lot of people wanted a quarterback who can move, right? You don't want the guy who's going to take 5-7 steps and throw the football anymore because you want that additional rushing yardage. You know, you get 50, 60 yards, that's a touchdown, right? That's why Josh Allen is so valuable. Lamar Jackson is so valuable, right? You go up and down. Jalen Hurts. You go up and down here. I think Daniels is going to be a good quarterback. I think Washington got their guy, and he can throw the football too. We know McLaurin's a really good wide receiver. It may not be much else there. We'll see what McCaffrey can be. Luke McCaffrey can be there in time. But I do have hope for him. I think at season's end he's going to be a quarterback one. It may be a low end quarterback one, but a quarterback one nonetheless.
Yeah, I was really impressed watching him in that game. All right, now Anthony Richardson, look, he's going to have a big year. He's going to have a big fantasy year. There's no question about it. I don't know about the long-term viability here. And look, give him credit. He hung in there with the Houston Texans. My fear for him, George, is that when you go back and you watch film, if you protect the deep ball against Richardson, he could hurt you with his legs. And that may be where all of his fantasy value is coming from. I cannot see him throwing 2 70-yard bombs like he did again.
That should come in time, right? Practice time. I think he will get better here. I think Richardson is going to be fine. Does need to learn how to avoid hits. All right. Once again, that hit. Remember that hit from Tua last night? He initiated it. Slide. The rules are made for you not to get hit. Take advantage of them.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. A little surprised here that we don't have any pre-Breeders' Cup preview here as we get toward that season here. I don't see anything here on the show there. Actually had a horse racing conversation on the phone this week, if you can believe that, and I'm not even doing that on the show today. That's okay. Jim Gazzale is with us from Legal Sports Report. We'll have the very latest on Pennsylvania, some online casino numbers as well. Jim, great to see you here on the show, and your prime time's coming up here, not too long from now.
Hey, if you want to mix in a Breeders' Cup story, I can go off the cuff on anything horse racing that you want to talk about, Craig.
I know you can. All right, well, let's focus on now, and we'll start off with a report that you can read over at LegalSportsReport.com on the state of Michigan, and one of those states that seems to be thriving in the world of sports betting, regardless of the sport, regardless of the time of the year. Positive numbers coming in from them.
Yeah, and Michigan's been a bit of an interesting market that I've been following somewhat closely over the last handful of months. And what we've seen, Craig, is just continuing to have those year-over-year gains each and every month. And August marked 12 consecutive months of those annual increases in handle. Just shy of $290 million bet in August, which was up from a little less than $230 million in August 2023. FanDuel, DraftKings still really dominating that market, more so, FanDuel leaders in handle and revenue pretty much on a consistent monthly basis in Michigan. But one thing that did stick out to me from that August report in Michigan was Caesars, and they had 6.5% of market handle in August, and that's one of their highest market shares of handle since the beginning of the year. And they've been slowly creeping up and up and up in that market share with the betting volume for Caesars in Michigan, which I found quite interesting as we kind of look at the entire landscape of the sports betting industry in the U.S. And, we'll touch on New Jersey here in the next couple of minutes, but, pretty much widespread gains in August year over year for just about every market that we've seen. Michigan, like I said, no different. And that Caesars figure really stuck out to me as they have really increased that market share of handle over the last handful of months. Now, of course, as we get into the September, October, November numbers, which will be coming out here in the next couple of weeks and months with the bulk of NFL betting taking place, we'll see what sort of staying power Caesars has. We'll see if FanDuel, DraftKings really cement themselves as the leaders of the market like they are, and see what they do throughout football season. But at least through the summer, pretty positive signs for Caesars in Michigan, Craig.
All right, good news there for Michigan. Now let's get to Pennsylvania, and very similar to other states around the country, the way to entice new sports bettors into their site or their app, or to just simply make a bet, is definitely by doing these promos, not just parlays, Jim, but promos as well. Tell us more.
Yeah, so in Pennsylvania, we have seen in the last 2 months, July and August, which we have the reports for, is that promo spending nearly doubled in both months when compared to those same months, July and August of 2023. And typically, what I found interesting would be, you'd figured you would see those promo increases start in September when NFL betting kicks off, but it seems like in the last couple of months, and even going back to last year, that promo spending is starting to increase a bit earlier and earlier, at least in Pennsylvania's case. Now, they did spend about $15 million, the sportsbooks did, in those free bet giveaways in Pennsylvania in August, and that $15 million was up from about $8.5 or so million in August of 2023. FanDuel, DraftKings are the two main heavy spenders in that market for July and August as well. So again, we'll see what happens when that September report comes out in the next handful of weeks. Last September, promotional spending, jumped to about $30 million for the month. So I'm expecting to see a very similar figure. Perhaps if July and August are any indication, perhaps we'll see even an increase over that $30 million promotional spend like we saw in September in Pennsylvania last year. Kind of going off of what we were just discussing in Michigan, handle revenue up in Pennsylvania as well in August. And again, just seeing those widespread increases like we've talked about pretty much every week, Craig, as we've seen and gone through the summer with most of these sports betting markets in the U.S. posting those gains in volume year over year. And like we talked about too, with the increase in the parlay betting, just those the revenue and the profits really increasing year over year for the sports books as well. And like I said, Pennsylvania has been no different looking at that August report.
All right, fair enough. Let's move over now to New Jersey, where, again, a story over Legal Sports Report is telling us the month of August was extremely profitable on the casino end. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, certainly a profitable month for the online casino operators, posting record revenue at $198.4 million in the month of August. It's the highest revenue in a single month in New Jersey. And just talking with some of our analysts at Legal Sports Report on the online casino side, they're expecting that total is going to surpass $200 million in September and throughout the fall. Just kind of looking at the trends over last year and what they're expecting to see in September, October, and beyond. So perhaps a short-lived record for New Jersey online casino revenue as we get into the fall. Now, contrary to what we were just discussing for Michigan, Pennsylvania, and just about every other U.S. sports betting market that we've seen reports for August, New Jersey was going in the opposite direction, actually, and they did not post year-over-year gains in handle and revenue. They actually saw a little bit of a decline. And Craig, if you recall, we spoke about this, probably about a year or so ago when New Jersey was coming out of New York launching its online sports betting market. And those first couple of months, January, February 2022, when New York launched, didn't really affect New Jersey all that much. But once we got into those later months, March, April, May, June, and that continued for about a full year, if not more, where New Jersey was kind of struggling to post those annual gains year over year in handle and revenue. They rebounded a little bit and had a nice stretch over the last 8 months where they were posting those annual gains. But in August, we saw the declines start to creep in. I don't think it has anything to do with New York, obviously. I think both of those markets have stabilized a bit since New York came online at the beginning of 2022. But just a little bit of an odd sort of trend for New Jersey, considering just about every other U.S. sports betting market is continuing to show positive signs of growth in betting volume year over year. A couple of interesting things, though. Despite that overall decline in market revenue, a handful of sportsbooks did show an increase in their market share. So some of them kind of making up ground against the leaders, and that was BetMGM, Bet365, Caesars, and ESPN Bet showing positive growth in August, despite the overall market having a little bit of a slow month.
All right, Jim. Well, great stuff as always. Thanks for bringing the information to the show. We'll read more about it over at LegalSportsReport.com. Thanks again for coming on.
All right, thanks, Craig.
All right, Jim Gazzale. He'll be watching Saturday Night Football. I know he loves college, even though fantasy football guy still loves college football. You know who else does? Roger Hoover. He's calling play-by-play for the Crimson Tide. Joining us next. Do we have a fantasy star on our hands here, George? Here is the question with Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. A lot of folks went into the fantasy season saying, hey, look, maybe this isn't Anthony Richardson, but it could be the next best thing. I'm here to tell you, I don't know. I'm sort of feeling like Daniels could be better than Anthony Richardson.
I don't know if I'm going to go there yet, all right? But I think he's in the conversation, yeah. What did we hear at draft time? A lot of people wanted a quarterback who could move. Right? You don't want the guy who's going to take 5-7 steps and throw the football anymore, because you want that additional rushing yards. You get 50, 60 yards, that's a touchdown. Right? That's why Josh Allen is so valuable. Lamar Jackson is so valuable. Right? You go up and down. Jalen Hurts. You go up and down here. I think Daniels is going to be a good quarterback. I think Washington got their guy, and he can throw the football too. We know McLaurin's a really good wide receiver. It may not be much else there. We'll see what McCaffrey can be. Luke McCaffrey can be there in time. But I do have hope for him. I think at season's end he's going to be a quarterback one. It may be a low end quarterback one, but a quarterback one nonetheless.
Yeah, I was really impressed watching him in that game. All right, now Anthony Richardson, look, he's going to have a big year. He's going to have a big fantasy year. There's no question about it. I don't know about the long-term viability here. And look, give him credit. He hung in there with the Houston Texans. My fear for him, George, is that when you go back and you watch film, if you protect the deep ball against Richardson, he could hurt you with his legs. And that may be where all of his fantasy value is coming from. I cannot see him throwing 2 70-yard bombs like he did again.
That should come in time, right? Practice time. I think he will get better here. I think Richardson's going to be fine. Does need to learn how to avoid hits. All right. Once again, that hit. Remember that hit from Tua last night? He initiated it. Slide. The rules are made for you not to get hit. Take advantage of them.
The early game of the year of college football is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Roger Hoover, of course, is a host for the Crimson Tide radio network. Also, he doesn't want to give himself credit, but does a great job at play-by-play for all different sports across the network. I'm going to give him the credit. Roger and I go back to his days doing play-by-play for baseball in the Marlins organization, but he's gone on to have a wonderful career and still continues to do it. He'll be in the house Saturday night when the game goes off. Roger, great to catch up with you. Thanks for coming on our show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Craig, for having me. I really enjoyed my time in Miami and South Florida covering baseball with you, but doing well here in Alabama. Now just ready for, as you mentioned, a huge football game coming up on Saturday.
All right, so it's been 4 years since Alabama's played Georgia during the regular season, and it's a really early matchup for this as well. Two teams that have playoff aspirations for the first time. It would appear that the team that loses is still in the mix, by the way, for the college football playoff with the addition of 12. Bulldogs, spread-wise, 1.5, 2-point favorites. I mean, look, in the SEC, when Titans match up, it does tend to go down to like the last possession of the game. You have a much better read, certainly, on this than I do. How do you think this game plays out on Saturday?
It's going to be really interesting because normally when we talk about an Alabama-Georgia matchup with Kirby Smart versus Nick Saban, you're essentially seeing the same team play each other in terms of playing styles, in terms of athletes they're recruiting, because players typically go to either Georgia or Alabama. Kirby Smart, obviously, with all the years he spent on Nick Saban's staff, recruits the exact same player to Georgia. Things have changed a little bit with Kalen DeBoer taking over the Alabama Crimson Tide. He has a different philosophy on offense, different philosophy on defense. So this is really the first time we've seen a matchup like this where you're not necessarily preparing for that same heavyweight style bouts where the game will be played in either the teens or the 20s, and you know the defense is going to dominate. There's a lot we don't know, I feel like, going into this matchup, but we do know that the Crimson Tide have been off to a really good start this year. 3-0, maybe had some tough moments against South Florida, but still put that game away with a 28-3 scoring margin in the fourth quarter, and then looked really explosive against Wisconsin as well. Georgia hasn't been as explosive. They really struggled against Kentucky a couple weeks ago. Their offense just hasn't had the same rhythm that we saw a year ago with Carson Beck, or especially during those back-to-back national championship years. So even though it's two familiar brands, still two teams at the very top of college football, this is a little bit different of a matchup than we've seen in the last few years between Georgia and Alabama.
Yeah, and certainly, Roger is, broadcasting for the Crimson Tide radio network, so is not going to have necessarily the same things to say about the point spread like I can, which was in the offseason. The look-ahead line was Georgia being a much more significant favorite. To Roger's point, Alabama has played better than Georgia in the month of September, which is why I think that this is a lot closer than it has been. So, Roger, you've certainly seen Nick Saban around as a coach. And now it's Kalen DeBoer's show. So I guess let's go there. How different has it been for you seeing him around as opposed to Coach Saban, who, of course, I know here from being in South Florida as the head coach of the Miami Dolphins as well, attitude-wise. We heard Kirby Smart say earlier in the week that they're preparing for a different look defensively. It's going to look much different than it did when they faced off against Nick Saban. So what is the breakdown with him as opposed to Saban going into a big game like this?
Well, for Coach DeBoer, he's just very comfortable in his own skin, and he has been just, very even-keeled for every moment. He has been the head coach of the Crimson Tide from first getting the job back in January, only a couple days after Coach Saban retired. He has been able to put his own spin on the program a little bit while not changing too much from what Coach Saban liked to do and what Alabama football has always been known for. But again, he's just been very comfortable, and he's kind of talked about the fact that, yes, it is a big game. The eyes of the college football world are on this matchup, but we're still going to do what we're going to do. And I think the players have really taken on that attitude as well. So it has been a lot different. Again, everyone seems a little bit more relaxed around Tuscaloosa. Coach Saban certainly had a very disciplined structure, and you kind of knew what you were getting each and every day. And so far, it's been similar with DeBoer. It's just been a little bit more loose and relaxed, and I think people have certainly enjoyed that. Just want the winning thing we saw with Coach Saban for all the years. Certainly want all that to continue moving forward. But it's been refreshing. And again, for Alabama to look so good in the first 3 games of the year, I think has really helped the fan base rally around Kalen DeBoer. Now they're just excited to see what SEC football is going to look like for him.
Yeah, I think it's all fair. And again, not to bring up the ghosts here of Coach Saban, but it's definitely a different look completely for the University of Alabama as it pertains to it. And I guess to kind of take it a step further, Roger, sort of as we dive into it here, I do think what's sort of odd here is that, and maybe not fair to DeBoer too, is that if Saban was still the head coach of the University of Alabama right now, NIL stuff notwithstanding, I think most people probably would pick Alabama to win this game. But because he is not, it's almost like people have slanted their view to Georgia, and I'm not sure that that's necessarily fair.
I would certainly agree with that, especially with what we've seen on offense from Alabama, because this team looks a lot better offensively than they did a year ago. Certainly upgrading the receiver position. Jeremy Bernard transfers over from Washington, and then maybe the best young player in college football, 17-year-old Ryan Williams, leading receiver so far for the Crimson Tide, and not just huge home run plays from Jalen Milroe downfield to him, but even in the short intermediate passing game, Ryan Williams has been a good threat. And I think Jalen Milroe is a vastly different player than he was a year ago, even going back to the SEC championship game where he played well against the same Georgia Bulldog team. I mean, he's making some really good decisions. I think the offense is really designed for him. He's already had 2 rushing touchdowns in each and every game. So he has 6 touchdowns already on the season. Just looks very comfortable. So again, I think this Crimson Tide team, the main question mark is the defense and the secondary. It's not been tested that much. And this is also a Tide team that's been giving up a lot of yards on the ground. Certainly can't afford to have that come up tomorrow.
Yeah, would agree. All right, can't wait to catch it, Roger. Hey, it's been great to see you, man, and great to catch up, and really appreciate you taking some time to come on the show. And thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Craig, for having me on. Hopefully we can do it again. Maybe talk about Alabama and Georgia, I don't know, in the SEC championship game or the college football playoff down the road. We know the Tide will be a part of it.
I mean, they could play 3 times. 3 times in one season.
We're ready for it.
I mean, it could happen. All right, Roger, thanks again for coming on the show. Catch Roger this weekend on the Crimson Tide Radio Network, hosting and getting you ready for the big matchup against Georgia. We'll be back to wrap it all up for the week next. Do we have a fantasy star on our hands here, George? Here is the question with Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. A lot of folks went into the fantasy season saying, hey, look, maybe this isn't Anthony Richardson, but it could be the next best thing. I'm here to tell you, I don't know. I'm sort of feeling like Daniels could be better than Anthony Richardson.
I don't know if I'm going to go there yet, all right, but I think he's in the conversation, yeah. What did we hear at draft time? A lot of people wanted a quarterback who could move, right? You don't want the guy who's going to take 5-7 steps and throw the football anymore because you want that additional rushing yardage. You get 50, 60 yards, that's a touchdown, right? That's why Josh Allen is so valuable. Lamar Jackson is so valuable, right? You go up and down. Jalen Hurts. You go up and down here. I think Daniels is going to be a good quarterback. I think Washington got their guy, and he can throw the football too. We know McLaurin's a really good wide receiver. It may not be much else there. We'll see what McCaffrey can be. Luke McCaffrey can be there in time. But I do have hope for him. I think at season's end he's going to be a quarterback 1. It may be a low-end quarterback 1, but a quarterback 1 nonetheless.
Yeah, I was really impressed watching him in that game. All right, now Anthony Richardson, look, he's going to have a big year. He's going to have a big fantasy year. There's no question about it. I don't know about the long-term viability here. And look, give him credit. He hung in there with the Houston Texans. My fear for him, George, is that when you go back and you watch film, if you protect the deep ball against Richardson, he could hurt you with his legs. And that may be where all of his fantasy value is coming from. I cannot see him throwing 2 70-yard bombs like he did again.
That should come in time, right? Practice time. I think he will get better here. I think Richardson's going to be fine. Does need to learn how to avoid hits. All right. Once again, that hit. Remember that hit from Tua last night? He initiated it. Slide. The rules are made for you not to get hit. Take advantage of them.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. There's another really big game going on in college football this week that is not going on in Alabama. It's actually going on in Central Florida. We'll tell you all about that. I'll also give you my thoughts on the final game being played at the Oakland Coliseum. It's time now for some last licks. All right, our producer Frank doesn't like when we end the show here with Dion, but we're going to do it again today. Got no choice. Deion Sanders doing an interview earlier this week stating that there's going to be a lot of kids, follow me here, a lot of kids attending the game at the Bounce House at the University of Central Florida, with UCF as big favorites, by the way, against Colorado, because there's a lot of kids from the state of Florida that want to play for Colorado and not UCF. And so this is basically a great recruiting opportunity for them to go see the Buffaloes and go see Dion and Shedeur as opposed to seeing UCF. Well, there may be some truth to that, what he's saying. It does make sense. Dion played for Florida State. He's very popular in the state, of course, coached in the state as well. But I don't know that this is set up in the right way for Dion. Now, where he would be right is if the Buffaloes beat UCF on Saturday. Where he would be wrong is if Colorado loses and they all come to see them and UCF wins. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case. I think a lot of kids would want to go to UCF. And by the way, Golden Knights are really good, having a really good season too. Again, I believe they're like 2 touchdown favorites in this game, if I'm not mistaken, against Colorado. I got to check that line. But either way, interesting comments made by Dion, maybe putting some fire on this, more fire on this flame, so to speak, if indeed Colorado doesn't win this week at UCF. Not sure the recruits are there for him. But okay. Final game pitched in a Washington Nationals uniform for Patrick Corbin. Some of you may be surprised that Patrick Corbin is still pitching in the big leagues. I got to give this guy credit. I mean, he got this mega $200 million contract. Let's give him credit. Ended up winning a World Series for the Washington Nationals. I know he's not been one of baseball's best pitchers. In fact, he's been at the bottom the last couple of years. But the Nats made him earn that dough. Kept pitching, kept playing. Didn't have a great time the last couple of years as well, but got his standing ovation. Good job by the Nationals fans, despite all of the struggles that he's had. Let me be clear here. The Nationals do not win the 2019 World Series without left-hander Patrick Corbin being on the mound, just like Steven Strasburg as well, who hasn't pitched since, basically. So I got to say, good job there by the Nationals. And Corbin, he ended up finishing it out. I don't know if he'll pitch again, but definitely deserves the credit that he earned yesterday, and the fans gave him credit. All right, speaking of which, fans in baseball, oh my gosh, was that a crying scene yesterday at the Oakland Coliseum, the very last game played by the Oakland A's as they get ready to go to, we think, Sacramento for the next 1 or 2 or 3 or how many years, we don't know, and then eventually end up in Las Vegas with none of their fans even there. Ricky Henderson in appearance, Dave Stewart in appearance, a lot of fans crying, didn't want to leave the park. Oh, this is just such a horrible deal for those fans in Oakland. I mean, this is a stadium, by the way, that I have been to a couple of times. Rowdy fans, fun atmosphere. I think I mentioned previously on the show that I was at the very last game played during the 2000 whatever season they had the strike, the 1994 season. I was there for the last game before the season ended. And I got to say, I feel for these fans. There's nothing worse than, even if you're not attending the games, which a lot of Oakland fans weren't, let's be real. Okay. They struggled. They did get fans there. They also tore it down. And look, I just think this is a very sad day for fans across the Bay Area. Hopefully they get an expansion team back there in the future, but they're going to have to build a new ballpark. And until that gets done, farewell, Oakland A's. Hello, Sacramento A's next year. All right, that'll do it for the show. Thanks to Jake filling in, directing, and, of course, our producer, Frank, as well as our guests here on the show. Thanks to Roger Hoover, Jim Gazzale from Legal Sports Report, and Bill Bender from Sporting News. As a reminder, you can catch me tomorrow morning, bright and early, talking fantasy football with George Kurtz, getting you ready for the big weekend. Lots of injuries around the National Football League. I'm dealing with them on my team. I'm sure you're dealing with them as well. So catch me tomorrow morning. And if you're not playing fantasy football and you're just here for the aspect of news here on NewsWire, then guess what? I'll see you back here Monday morning as we recap week 4 already. Week 4 of the National Football League season exclusively here on the show. Have a great weekend, everyone. See you then.